Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Jaymorz Collectibles. It sure has been a while. I did want to make this video prior to my modern video or my previous video, but I decided to be a ninja behind the bushes and watch the market, let it calm down a little bit before making any predictions, claims, or providing my 2 cents for the matter. So with all of it, I think it's T-minus 60, 90 days right now. Let's see where the market stands for reserve list cards. Well, the market overall is slowly tapering off from the mass hysteria we've been seeing 2 to 3 months ago. Card prices are incrementally decreasing over time, and the trading volume is seeing similar patterns where the number of completed transactions are slowly tapering off versus the number of available listings out there on your open platforms, such as eBay and TCG Player. Not only that, we're noticing that the revised dual lands, which seems to be what the market follows, or at least what I follow to assess this, has been seeing similar patterns as well. I think roughly there are 3,800 completed transactions between the month of February and March. And for the number of listings, it's a little more than 2,500 currently at the filming of this video. So, with Economics 101, supply and demand sort of pursuing the market, you'll eventually see a retracement on those cards. You can also see this in play when looking at the completed listings for revised Wheel of Fortunes. At their peak at $500, the cards have been slowly tapering off and stabilizing anywhere from $250 to $300 per transaction. So this is sort of showing you the supply is out there for these cards. Do not underestimate the supply for revised 3rd edition cards. Therefore, as we begin to transition towards the next market cycle, we'll notice a lot more supply entering the market and bringing down the prices. There will be a retracement, ladies and gentlemen. The question is when and how strong will it be? Well, let's take a look at a few other examples before we make any bold predictions. Bazaar of Baghdad is finally back in market circulation. This is healthy for the hobby and the investor collectively. With more copies available, raw copies that is, available on the market, prices will begin to stabilize. Of course, they will retrace nowhere near their lows as the card is a high-end coveted card innate to the game. Same holds true for many of the other high-end cards that have been bought out, such as Mishra's Workshops, your Tabernacles, and your Libraries of Alexandria. However, the other cards that are mid to low tier that will see a lot more offloading potential will retrace, so be careful when pursuing the reserved list cards as a whole. Not every card should be considered equally next to its counterpart. There are some cards that are more susceptible to larger retracements versus others that are not. Let's take a look at what's going on with the Urza reserve list cards. You have your Gaia Cradles being healthy at a solid $800. You have your Gilded Drakes following suit with $300 prices. You have your Grim Monoliths in similar price ranges as well. So bearing this in mind, where is the market headed and what kind of market cycle are we to expect moving forward into the summer? Well, my friends, Clairvoyant Joey is here to tell you that my title is phony and I cannot predict the future. However, I can connect the dots and tell you what's a fair market assessment at this time. So actually, let's begin diving deeper into what I believe are key considerations to determining the state of the reserve list. Okay, so we did have rumors that the reserve list may crumble and fall apart after the news that Hasbro now recognizes Wizards of the Coast as a separate entity or division in its company. Well, as everyone expected, of course, you have your Paul Revere's crying out to the MTG world that the reserve list is no longer, and the market implications were not really seen as much as if the market was under the stipulation that it may actually be in shambles. Well, with that out of the way and knowing that the reserve list is here to stay, what can I tell you first and foremost? Well, as I've said earlier in the video, supply, supply, supply. Supply will dictate the overwhelming majority of these card prices, from high-end cards to low to mid-tier cards. Anything on the reserve list is susceptible to open supply. On the flip side, you have natural attrition that will elevate card prices over time. Of course, this is what we've seen with the reserve list buyout early on in this market cycle, and what we've noticed with Bazaar of Baghdad, which spiked the price up considerably. Of course, having no market float is very difficult with certain cards, i.e. anything from revised 3rd edition. So you kind of want to be cognizant of that when assessing the market due to supply. It is very easy to offload quantities into the open market. People will take note of this, underbidding will happen, and the prices will continue to follow that trajectory unless a market event happens. So be mindful of that. It's a lot harder to do so with the high-end cards, so knowing that, you sort of hedge your risk when it comes to those types of cards. So that's my first market assessment. What can I say after that? Well, I've been noticing a lot of wallet fatigue across the board. A lot of new investors have been flocking the collectible space due to social media and a lot of viral videos. However, they do not understand the illiquidity of these cards. Noting that the stock market has been seeing major upticks, a lot of people draw parallelisms between this space and the stock market. However, as soon as they come to realize that that's not the case, they'll quickly fold, and thus feeding into the supply of the market. So wallet fatigue sort of goes and feeds into the supply of the market as people offload their positions in hopes of selling at the hysteria of the market. However, right now, as the market's calming down, that may not be the case for a lot of these people who want to sort of exit the market right then and take profit. So with wallet fatigue comes the stimulus check. So as the filming of this video, the government and the president has signed off on the stimulus check money. So $1,400 is going to anyone making under $80,000 a year. Well, that's quite a bit of the population for the collectibles space. This gives more buying power to those investors and hobbyists of the game to sort of play Tetris in picking and choosing and optimizing their funds in buying reserve list cards. So you're going to see a lot of price spikes on those low to mid-tier reserve list cards in the short term. Don't be confused with organic, sustainable growth, especially on those low to mid-tier cards. The high-end cards with the $1,400 sort of fall out of scope, and you have some sort of partition between those cards and what's available to people who are allocating the government fund money or the stimulus check in hopes of building their position in reserve list cards. So with that out of the way, what else is the government and the world sort of concocting to tie into the reserve list realm of Magic Gathering? Well, you have the vaccines in full effect, and you're wondering how this ties into Magic Gathering, and you may be thinking this is a leap of faith in my judgment, but fear not. I think with the onset of vaccinations being widely publicized, Magic may consider opening up venues and hosting events such as Grand Prix for local vendors, especially of big companies, to sort of trade, buy, sell, and transact these reserve list cards. So I've been reading on the Reddit forums, the good old Reddit forums, and you know you can trust them when they have that little robot there and good karma. These cards may actually see a downtick, believe it or not, because of negotiations and haggles. So if the vendor is able to negotiate because they're on the spot, ultimately decreasing their buy list prices as they're able to obtain more reserve list cards. So right now, those big companies are in a frenzy to regain their position that they offloaded at the peak of the pandemic, which was, again, a big mistake. And I agree with Rudy 100% that this goes down in MTG history. In fact, even collectibles history, and textbooks should use this as an example. Okay, on to my next assessment. I've been objective thus far, however, I will be biased in this one particular case. Peter Adkinson went on record confirming the print run of alpha cards. A lot of people out there think this is negligible in the implication of alpha card prices. However, if you were paying attention to the alpha card market, card prices haven't been seeing tremendous upswings. In fact, they have been steady throughout the reserve list buyout. The diamond hands had their positions. The new investors, which seem to have rallied the market, can't really afford alpha cards in masses, and therefore you can't really move the price unless there's substantial movement, i.e. supply and demand. So the supply is always there, the demand's always there, but no transactions can actually meet between the two cards. Well, I think this is the indicator to sort of merge the two, and more transactions will be seen in the foreseeable future. Thank you, Peter Adkinson, because I think this is going to be where Magic Gathering cards will finally reach a level where Pokemon is. Of course, you've seen this with the Alpha Black Lotus that hit a record price on eBay auctions 2 months ago or so. But this is more of the momentum to come when it comes to other alpha rares out there in circulation. So, those are my 4 assessments. Let's go further into what I think will happen in the foreseeable future. Will there be a crash? Will there be a further increase to the market overall? There definitely is some opportunity in the market. Of course, with the higher cost to entry into this market, you sort of build more risk, and a lot of novice investors unfamiliar with the collectibles space, and MTG in particular, will be weary of this moving forward. So I don't think we'll have an increase of trading volume as we've seen with the reserve list buyouts, as the market realized that the cards were indeed underpriced. Now that the market is sort of homogenizing and trying to find the right balance in terms of supply, demand, and card prices, we'll be seeing true organic, sustainable growth. So with that being said, I think this is bullish news for the collectible space moving forward. In the realization of this, many new investors in the collectible space who are prudent investors will keep their position in the market. Therefore, there is less market hysteria to drive prices further and further down. So I think the market will eventually develop, again, healthy, sustainable, organic growth as demand sort of naturally brings up the prices. Of course, with anything, there is uncertainty, and my word is not the word of the market. So you just have to bear through it and see where the market yields during particular market cycles and where buy list prices end up being throughout each quarter of the year. Well, as for me personally, I will continue to build my position in reserve list cards. Of course, following my investing principles, I will go after those that are the heavy hitters, more notable cards, as that hedges more risk versus those low to mid-tier cards. Don't underestimate the supply of anything outside of ABU and the Four Horsemen. Again, supply will nuke those card prices a lot more than anything within the ABU Four Horsemen sets. So, one last point that I want to make, and I sort of touched on it in my State of Modern video. If you haven't seen that already, feel free to check it out. I think it's a good video. Modern is back, baby. And I can tell that Wizards is actually doing things that promote the well-being of the overwhelming majority of MTG players. So, with that being said, Standard may make a comeback, Pioneer may make a comeback, as well as modern. So this may shift the buying potential of the market overall, as well as the market cap when it comes to standard and modern cards in comparison with vintage and reserve list cards. You want to sort of pay attention to the number of completed transactions with one market demographic versus the other moving forward, just to see if there's any sort of trends that will indicate otherwise. I hope you enjoyed my perspective on the state of the reserve list. Make sure you comment down below what reserve list cards you're collecting in particular. But before you do that, make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can catch more Jaymorz Collectibles.